Hi, is this Dr. Dean Neal's office? Hi, I was wondering, are you guys some kind of cult?
You really expect me to answer a stupid question like that?
Uh, well, yeah.
Hi everyone, Steve the Amateur Historian here with you, and have I got a video for you guys. If you're from the Portland area and you have a bit of a keen interest in strange things, crazy things, in and around your community, your general area, then this video is going to maybe be old hat to you if you already know about this. It's something that's not really all that known about outside of even Oregon, if at a stretch the Pacific Northwest. But if you're not from the local area, this may be news to you guys. What I'm talking about is the controversy, the conspiracy, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it. This is the story of the Temple of Oculus Anubis. Steve the Amateur Historian. Now, in the realm of Oregon, what is the Temple of Oculus Anubis? What does that even mean? What is this place? It probably sounds strange just hearing the name of it. Well, it varies depending on who you talk to. To some people, the Temple of Oculus Anubis is a functioning cult. It is a gateway to hell. It is the Illuminati. It's Freemasonry. It is Satanism. It is just about any crazy, creepy, frightening thing you could possibly be frightened of, especially searching around crazy things on the internet. On the flip side, this place that some like to call the Temple of Oculus Anubis is really just a large property at the end of a cul-de-sac. So there's going to be a lot to be discussed in this video, and I want to make it clear right now on the outset, I honestly don't know what to believe in this case. There's definitely things that make me highly suspicious, but is this place really a Temple of Oculus Anubis? Is there cult stuff going on down there? Is there satanic stuff going on down there? Are there human sacrifices, blood drinking going on? Probably not. Even if there's something weird going on down there, it's probably not to that extreme. I just want to make this known right now. I'm going based purely on all the information I've been able to gather online. You know, separating the, online message board postings, maybe this is real, maybe it's not, with actual, news reports, things of that nature, whatever information can be gathered out there. So everything I tell you, none of it is an exaggeration on my part. It is all information I have found searching out there, going through all the information, and anything I say beyond that is purely my opinion in this regard. So I just want that known out of the gate. I'm going to try to be as objective as possible in producing this video. And that said, let's get into the craziness. Simply put, you travel into the town of Damascus, which is located southeast of Portland, not too far away. It's kind of on the fringes of the Portland metropolitan area. So you're kind of starting to get out to more of a rural landscape. And that's where Damascus is. In that vicinity, there is a small street. Offshoot of another, it's just a straight line, and it ends in a small cul-de-sac. And at the end of that cul-de-sac, there is a tall, thin, gated entryway that has a small route that processes forth. And if you look through the gates, you don't really see too much. But right through the gates, dead ahead, there is a large Egyptian-style statue located there. And at the entrance, there's actually a crest that stands directly above the gate. And on either side of the gate, there are two large lion figurines. And you can see a few other things kind of hidden off in the brush. And they all have this very Egyptian theme to them. And beyond that, that's all you can really see because the property is so covered in trees that even if you look at Google Earth, you don't really see a whole lot. You can see what are the remains, essentially, of an unfinished home. There's a few other little things you can see, but from the outside of those gates, you don't really see a whole lot. And presumably, this is just a very large property owned by a fairly private, well-to-do family that has taken an interest in Egyptian history and have acquired these pieces and put them on their property just for fun. That's the presumably the sensible side of things. And I don't know how far back the story of this temple of Oculus Anubis, I know a lot of people just call it Oculus, which I'll come back to in a little bit. The furthest back I've seen this referenced is 2013. It may go back further than that, but the furthest back information I've seen is in old 4chan archives that are dated from 2013 that show people discussing this place and trying to figure out what it is and trying to find a phone number to contact the people that control this property. Now, as far as the ownership of this property, it is known that the property belonged to an eye doctor named Dr. Dean Neal, who had a wife, Sharon Neal, and at least a couple of children, and it seems they were all living on this property. And Dr. Neal, as I'll refer to him, he ran his own eye care shop that was called 2020 Eye Care, located in Gresham. Just due east of Portland and due north of Damascus. And Dr. Dean had his son, Anthony Neal, working with him there at the eye doctor place. And mind you, it's at least 5-6 years ago the stories of Oculus Anubis start coming out. And I think it was probably mostly the result of people stumbling onto this cul-de-sac and seeing this gated entryway with these interesting Egyptian figures and thinking, this is really weird. I wonder, what's going on in here, what these people are like. And it seems to have just blossomed from there. As people started looking into the property and trying to get as much information as they could, it was found that permits had been taken out by the property owners to build underground heated tunnels, which you just think of that, you hear that, and you think that's interesting. And the idea seems to be that the Neal family was building another home on the property. There was already one home there, but they were building a much larger, more elaborate home on the property. And you can actually see that unfinished home today on Google Earth. You'll see what looks like just kind of a partially constructed building. And that's this new house they were going to build. And it's been said that this tunnel was going to connect that new home with the other home. Now, one of the first big kind of online posts that was put online, put on Reddit, kind of got a lot of people's attention, kind of really started blowing up the controversy of Oculus Anubis, even though it had been kind of spoken of before in, the dark recesses of the internet. There was a posting that someone made. I'm presuming it's a woman. She references having a boyfriend, but there's no sex reference, so maybe it's a guy, maybe it's a girl, I don't know. But this individual posted about becoming very interested in Oculus and paying many visits down the road to the cul-de-sac to visit this site. And the way that this poster describes Oculus, it's almost like the whole street is part of it. She would reference how there were white vans in every driveway, that people would have lights on in their houses seemingly 24 hours a day. They would visit during the daytime, they'd visit at 3 in the morning. Lights would always be on, people would be in their homes standing still. She referenced when they would drive down the street and pass these people's houses, they would all come out of their houses and stand at the end of the street and like watch them going down. Very mind control, MK Ultra, is this a CIA experiment? And then getting to the end of the road, they would talk about how the radio in their car, I assume they just say their radio, would go out and just all this crazy stuff. And it kind of kept bringing them back over and over again. And overall, I'm highly suspicious of the story. It was posted on a no sleep group on Reddit, which is kind of seemingly a mix of potentially real creepy stories along with ones that are more kind of creepypasta, urban legend type stuff. And it would appear in this Reddit posting, which I want to say was posted in 2014, because when I accessed it recently, it said posted 4 years ago. They reference these permits for these underground tunnels, which will get anybody's mind racing. It got my mind racing. I heard through the grapevine that someone claimed that they were going to use them for like a type of greenhouse, to which I was like, that sounds absolutely ridiculous. And then it later on came out that these tunnels were presumably used as an access point between multiple houses. And the culmination of this Reddit account was this poster would say that on their last visit before this posting, a couple weeks before the post was made, they returned to Oculus and found that the street was completely dark. No lights on in people's houses. It didn't seem like anybody was around. And all these white vans, which, a lot of white vans in the area is a very covert CIA, FBI type thing. And they said their radio was working. They got to the gate. It was pitch black. And they were just kind of unnerved by that sudden shift and took off. And if you're looking at this in a very conspiratorial light, it looks like there was some kind of, obviously strange thing going on here. Maybe it was a CIA experiment, who knows. And either they finished their work or someone was onto them and they had to just pack it all in and take off. It's kind of the vibe that's conveyed from this Reddit post. But at the conclusion of this piece, the poster expresses that after this last visit, she started seeing, it seems to be, the classic man in black. This guy dressed in a suit, wearing a fedora, seemed to have dark curly hair and very dark eyes. And she would start seeing this guy loitering in front of her house with a white van behind him. And she would say the night before she made this post on Reddit that the man actually came up to her door and knocked on it and kind of lingered by the door momentarily before leaving. And when she finally got the nerve to go up and open the door, there was an envelope sitting there that had the words "Here we are" written on it, like, here we are watching you, or here we are, we're at this point, your move. I don't know. And it was just her saying, like, what do I do about this? You know, I'd be freaked out too. You know, the whole account is just a little too wild, a little too crazy. I don't really believe it. It may have been intended to be just a creepy story. That's how a lot of these postings are on this page, and they're intended to be realistic. So you're not going to come in at the end and be like, ha ha ha, this didn't really happen, but did you enjoy my story? And just too much of it, at least doesn't coincide with my experience. Now, I have visited Oculus, the actual site, twice. Never gone through the gate, just gone down the road, taken a look, gotten a little worked up, and then turned and left. It's just a brief visit. And you know, I've heard these postings about all the houses on the street being really nice, and they all have a lot of vehicles, and all their vehicles are white, and there's all these white vans around. And I never noticed that. I know when I looked on Google, most of the vehicles of these houses were actually, there are a lot of, you know, beat up old trucks. Damascus is a very rural area. You know, you're a few miles away from, you know, more of the city. So you've got a lot more kind of beat up old trucks and things like that on people's property. Never saw really any white vans. And in particular, I don't recall, I know both times we went, it was at night. One was early evening, but I know the first time we went, it was late at night, and it was pitch black down there, which means I want to say not a lot of houses had their lights on. It was so dark that when we got to the cul-de-sac and kind of started to turn around by the gate, I had to roll down the window to the van we were in, even at night, just so I could actually see the gate. And even then, I could barely make it out. It was pitch black out there, and this was probably, I would guess, early to mid 2016 when this first visit happened, and maybe about 6 to 8 months later we went back and gave it another pass by. Never noticed anything visually that was strange, you know, in terms of the people that live on the street leading down to the cul-de-sac. I never actually saw anybody, you know, on the property or anything. So it's hard for me to believe a lot of those stories. But that said, I definitely, and of course, these visits, I knew very little about the place and only knew the conspiracy theories that I'd been told about. So you can get yourself worked up. But I remember just going down the road and sitting there and feeling very tense and very uneasy and feeling like we were being watched. I don't know how much of that was a real, genuine feeling, how much of that was me just psyching myself out. But yeah, by the time we got to the gate, especially in the first visit when it was really dark, and I was like, I couldn't even really enjoy it because I was like, I want to turn around and get out of here. I want to turn around and get out of here. I'm very uncomfortable. And even as we were driving away, I kept kind of looking back, you know, not like to see the gate again because I could barely see it when we were right up next to it. But I just kept kind of looking back and looking around like, are we being followed? Are we being followed? And this was even before I really had heard any of these stories about people claiming to have been followed by people who had tried to sneak out on the property and gotten chased out. So I definitely got a very unnerving feeling the first time. The second time, not so much, but that first time, it was just like, I didn't want to be there. And it started coming out, these stories from people who went to the site to try to sneak in, to kind of peer through the gates to see what they might see if there was anything else strange there. Interesting places like this just genuinely attract people to them. And as much as I want to say, you know, it sucks because this is somebody's private property, and it's got to be frustrating to have people constantly coming up to your gate and kind of peering through and being like, I wonder what else is back there. And it is kind of crappy, but it is this thing we have. We're driven by curiosity. And these stories started coming out. Who knows which ones are true and which ones are fake? They've popped up on message boards. They've popped up on Reddit over the years. People reportedly sneaking onto the grounds and being chased off the grounds. And when they actually got into their cars to leave and drive away, they were followed by white Suburbans. There's been reports of people driving, you know, single-colored cars out of the property, and it appeared that the people driving were wearing hoods. I've heard stories about people sneaking onto the property. One story I heard, it was a woman, I want to say it was on Reddit, and she expressed that her friends, she took off after not being there for very long. She said her friends found the tunnels and that they were these white-walled, white-floored tunnels, and that they reached a door, and when they reached the door they heard voices on the other side, and that was enough for them to say, okay, we need to get out of here before we get caught. And just as these stories start coming out, the legend grows and grows and grows, and it's hard to know what's real and what isn't. It seems like so much has been exaggerated, and these little stories have blown up into cult stories, occult stories, the whole shebang. And it's hard to know which, if any, of these stories are to be believed. The whole lore behind this one place, where we don't even know what's really happening here, it's so broad and it's so crazy that it's even turned up in this game called Reblocks, which I don't know anything about, but it's obvious this multiplayer game where a lot of content is created by the users that are actually using it, and people who have played the game have literally discovered that parts that have been created based clearly and entirely on the Oculus Anubis property. It's out of control is what it is.
Here's the creepy part, guys. Here is the creepy part, because this area here is actually in real life. Like, it's actually an actual place. So if we take this, can I have a screenshot? Sure, man, go for it. So if we go back to this page here, and you see down here, it says enter, and it has some coordinates, 45.39, -122, etc., etc. So if we take these coordinates and we go to Google Maps, so let's go and grab these. Let's go on over to Google Maps. We're going to put in the first coordinate, put a comma, and we're going to put in the second coordinate here and hit enter. And now this is going to take us to this spot right here in the world. This is called Oculus Anubis, which is what this whole area here is based on. And we click on the photos, you're going to see that there is that statue right there, the exact same statue right there in real life in these woods. Now, I don't know where these woods are at. Here's the exact same gate that was in, like, right up there. The exact same gate. It's, like, exact for exact here. It's crazy. Man, this is crazy. Look at it. Look at it. That's insane.
Beyond those stories, what is known is that this Dr. Neal owned the property. I've heard somewhere in the realm of 2008 to 2009, this property was attained by him, and he had his family there living with them. Now, for years, at least a couple of years, all this attention was focused on this property. All these people posting blogs and sneaking onto the property and taking videos and posting pictures and so on and so forth. But nobody really knowing anything about the family. People who lived in the vicinity said that these were very private people. They didn't come over to your house to, on game night. They didn't come over to ask for a cup of sugar. They were very private, hidden away deep in, down the lane in their property. Well, things got a little interesting in 2016. So, based on the information I've gathered, which is in published articles taken from the proceedings involved, to start the story out, first, May of 2015, Dr. Neal, at the age of 80, passes away after having a stroke. So the main patriarch of the family that lived here in this temple of Oculus Anubis passes away. Only months later, the one surgeon they had on hand working at this 20/20 eye care that doctor had run, and his son, Anthony, had worked with him, he is fired from his job. And as he would report, and this is where things really got interesting and suddenly started blowing up, and the details of this oh-so-private family started coming out, because this Dr. Neal had been doing eye care for over 50 years. This was like his lifelong career, and he was known as this, pillar of the community and a guy you could trust and a very down-to-earth considerate man about town, a good Samaritan. Well, this surgeon comes out, again, like early 2016. He gets fired, and he goes to the authorities and eventually tells the federal government that the reason he was fired was because he refused to go along in this fraud scheme that Dr. Neal, the head man, had been engaged in, and his son Anthony had been kind of in cahoots with him on, even though it seems like the doctor had manipulated his son. Because it has to be mentioned, not that it excuses his actions and his involvement, but it is known that Dr. Neal's son Anthony is regarded as being on the autism spectrum, and his defense attorneys in this case tried to argue that to try to maybe, you know, get some leniency for him. But it seems like the court, or at least the judge, didn't really buy that. He said that the son still knew what he was doing, and what he was doing was wrong. Now, what were they doing? What was this concocted fraud scheme that the doctor was doing? Well, what Dr. Neal was doing was, one, he was skimming off essentially healthcare money by having patients engage in testing that they didn't need to have done, double billing patients, all these little crooked things that when the insurance companies would pay up the money and so on and so forth, they'd be pocketing this extra change. And what's interesting when you think about how this place is called Oculus Anubis, it was found out during these trial proceedings that you can still find it today, listings for 20/20 eye care, even though, you know, the doctor's been long dead, over 3.5 years now. The kind of the company that it seems ran 20/20 eye care, which was literally just run by Dr. Neal and a few other people. 3 to 5 people worked in this eye care place. Like, it was all the doctor. But the company that kind of presided over them was called Oculus Incorporated. And it was found out that Oculus Incorporated was pretty much just kind of a shell company that they had come out with, and they had a bank account open in that, and all this extra healthcare money they were skimming off, they were slipping into that account. They, taken in some $3 million, and they were using that money to help build that new house out there on their property. And I'm assuming some of that money went into these heated tunnels. It was reported in the permits for that it was like a $2 million price tag just to build these tunnels, and it was at least a couple $1,000,000 to build the house. But in addition to this healthcare fraud that they were engaging in, they had also been not reporting taxes, essentially, on their income they were making. And, a doctor with his own office, they were probably making pretty good money, and it's known that for at least a couple of years, Anthony, and I'm assuming the doctor himself, weren't reporting the taxes on their earned income, and they'd skimmed off, I think, over $1 million that they hadn't paid the IRS. So there was multiple fraud schemes going on. And unfortunately, it's 2016 before this comes to the attention of the authorities, and Anthony Neal ultimately is put on trial for this. So the doctor lucks out and passes away before all this happens, because he was definitely going to get busted and get a much stiffer sentence than his son did. And he was probably going to die in prison, most likely. But yeah, even when the judge tried to be as lenient as possible with the son, understanding that he was kind of the second man in this whole thing. He was not the brains behind it. And I believe when all was said and done, he was sentenced to a little over a year, which included time he'd already served at that point. But he was also obligated to pay back all this money to these healthcare companies that they'd schemed, and he had to pay like almost $1 million to the IRS. So, their practice is gone. This is just a son, presumably without, a job anymore. I don't know how he's going to ever pay that off. And beyond the details of just the healthcare and tax fraud, that Dr. Neal was engaging in with his son, helping him along the way. One of the things about people going on trial, especially people with very private lives, is these details that you don't want to come out if you're those people, or things that are completely unexpected will start coming out of the woodwork. If there is something the prosecution can use against you legally, they will use it. And that was where Dr. Neal, who again is passed away, he's not there to try to defend himself, not that he really could, it would come out in this trial that this Dr. Neal was a grade A scumbag, and I'm glad the guy can't breathe anymore. Dr. Neal, who was the patriarch of this home and this wonderful doctor who had a great practice for 50 years, and we'll forget the fraud. Now again, this is according to court documents, things that came out during the trial that even members of the Neal family did not deny. And of course there's unshakable evidence in that vein that this happened. Dr. Neal, the great doctor, would tie his wife down to their bed and he would force her to have sex with him. It was rape, is what it was. You know, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He abused alcohol, and he was abusive while he was on alcohol. Anthony, his son, who again is autistic, said that when he was like in his early teenage years, his dad would come into his room stumbling ass drunk and tell him to go into his mother's bedroom to convince her to have sex with him being the father. He would use the son to try to guilt the mom into having sex. So he was abusive, and it seems like he had some kind of crazy sex disorder, sex obsession. I don't want to necessarily say he was a nymphomaniac. I fortunately don't know the guy that well. But that's what was going on with his wife. And I just referenced his son, Anthony, and how he would do that to his son. It's also known that he was obviously very abusive towards his son, Anthony. And it came out on trial that Anthony, when he was a child, was raped by an acquaintance of his father, and his father would not let this rape be reported to the authorities for the fear it caused to his image. The guy was a megalomaniac, an egotist of the highest level. You know, to excuse the rape of your own child because it would embarrass your family somehow. And apparently, in order to deal with it, essentially just accept that he was raped and move on, apparently Anthony would like bite the back of his hands, and then I think they even presented pictures that showed him with like marks all over his hands. It was a coping mechanism. It was like a self-abusing coping mechanism. I mean, how would you want to handle that situation where it's like something that horrible happens to you and you're just supposed to deal with it and walk away from it? Anthony was so traumatized and beaten down by his scumbag father. He actually one time in his life fake changed his name and tried to flee to Russia. He literally tried to change his identity and escape to a foreign country on the other side of the globe to get away from his scumbag father. And trust me, I want to use much more colorful terms to describe this guy. And somehow, I didn't quite get the details on it, but somehow this effort to flee to Russia didn't quite work. Anthony ended up back home and ultimately ended up working for his dad. So it's like this guy was stuck under his dad's thumb his whole damn life. And now he's going to jail. And again, what he did was wrong. The guy should have to serve time. And the fact that he's not serving too much, I almost kind of feel is justified at the end, especially with all this money that his dad should be responsible for, mostly. But now it's all falling on his shoulders because his dad lucked out. Son of a bitch, you know? So, at the end of the day, even if you excuse all these conspiracy theories, you know, behind those gates, if you open up and go back there, are you going to find cult rituals? Are you going to find the Illuminati? Are you going to find Satanism? You know, are you going to find strange Freemason secret meetings? Even if you, dismiss all that, even if you can completely disprove it, the fact of the matter is that this side of the story, the Dr. Neal side of the story, and the life he led, that's the real troublesome, bothersome, just grade A screwed up aspect of this property and the owner of it, who is now, fortunately, in my opinion, deceased. So at the end of the day, you still take away, this was a really screwed up, messed up guy, and who knows what kind of weird stuff his family was having to go through those years they lived on that property, those last 6-7 years of this doctor's life. They're all living there, and he's the patriarch. I don't even want to think about it. But now here's the really interesting recent development, and another reason I really wanted to get this video done and to get it out was I noticed you have the aftermath of the trial. Dr. Dean, the messed up patriarch of this family, is long gone. His business is gone. His son has to go off and serve jail time and figure out how they're going to pay off all this money. Well, they still have this large property, and they still have this house that they're trying to build, and all this stuff that they were going to put this sham money into that they got busted for. And I just noticed when I was doing a little bit of research, only a few months ago, back in September 2018, the head of the household, which I believe is a Natalia Neal, which I can only assume is the doctor's daughter, Anthony's sister. It seems like she's kind of the one in control of the property. Well, the property just got, I believe, foreclosed on because they owed all this money on it that they hadn't paid off. And it's like this huge, huge bill that the banks are essentially taking control of the property, and it's going to go up for auction at the January 2019, the start of the next year. This property, the Temple of Oculus Anubis, is going to be up for sale, essentially. It is possible, I was looking at the rules, and I think up until like 5 days before the auctioning of the property actually takes place, technically the Neal family has till then to possibly come up with this money, but I want to say it's at least hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not eclipsing $1 million. It's a lot of money that it's very unlikely they're going to get their hands on. So this is a very interesting twist that's happening right now. Like, I know my girlfriend and her mom drove by it the other day, and they said it was pitch black. It was like there was nobody there, and I'm like, there probably isn't anybody there. I mean, because of the state of the property, I don't think anybody from the Neal family is living there anymore. I think the property is in control by the banks right now, which means it's just sitting there waiting to either be regained by the Neal family, as unlikely as that is, or to be bought off from them at auction, and then somebody else is going to own the property. And it's so interesting to think. Like, I wish someone would set up like a secret camera there to try to video, like have an ongoing video of, from now until the property is sold, just in case these crazy things that they say are happening, these crazy connections that the property has, whether it's Freemason stuff, Illuminati stuff, cult stuff, satanic stuff. I'd be very interested to see if there's, because now it's kind of like everybody's kind of got their guard down. The people that live there are probably like, well, then again, the ears of the people that live on that street may be perking up more, because I know everybody living on that street, not just, the Neal family while it was happening. People that live on that street are so tired, and I can understand it, as interested as I am in this whole thing. They are so tired of people driving down to the end of that cul-de-sac and checking the property out and driving down there and getting out and taking pictures. It's a very private, rural area. It's probably people that like it like that. They like it peaceful and quiet, and it's kind of obnoxious to them that all these people are showing up all the time. So I don't know, maybe the fact that I don't know how many, people know this right now, that this property is in this transitional phase and that there may be nobody there. Is that going to lead more people to try to sneak in? But beyond that, if there is something crazy going on, if there is something nefarious going on in, the Illuminati cult type scale, whoever's connected to that, beyond the Neal family, if they would be connected to that. Of course, I'm just spitballing and theorizing. That would mean that there's, potentially like evidence of what's going on that property. And come January 2019, some random person at auction is going to have ownership of that property, which means they can go in and do whatever they want to it. Is somebody who's possibly got a suspicious background or is maybe potentially connected to something like the Illuminati? Are they going to be up there with a bunch of money to buy off the property so that they can keep control of it and keep the secrets of what's happening in there safe? Who knows? We'll see come January. But it'd be very interesting if there's like any kind of suspicious vehicles showing up and people sneaking onto the property, not because they're interested in finding out what's going on, but because they're connected to what's going on. And they got to get into that property, and anything that might show what's really been going on down in there, they got to get all that stuff out of there before it gets sold to someone and they can freely roam that property all they want. Again, I'm not saying I believe any of this stuff. It's all very interesting, and we're human beings. It's very enticing when you see something interesting or something out of the norm, like a house at the end of a rural cul-de-sac with a gate in front of it and all this Egyptian stuff in there, and you've got this family with this sordid background. You want to take the craziness and run with it, which so often leads us down crazy trails. It so often blows nothing up into something huge. But just because that happens doesn't mean because that irresponsible craziness happens, it doesn't mean that there's suddenly not something strange going on. It's very hard to say. It really comes down to, do you believe these stories that people have posted about going onto the property and the strange things they've seen, finding the tunnels, being chased out, being followed out by people in white cars, people in cars with hoods, all that stuff. Do you believe those accounts? I don't know. I mean, I have to be 50-50 about it, It's really hard to believe in general, which makes me want to potentially believe these people. But, people are writing creepypasta stories and stories connected to urban legends and crazy stuff all the time. They make it up for shock value. They make it up for entertainment purposes. They make it up to get attention. It's really hard to say, but I'm very, very interested in seeing what happens and seeing who purchases this property come the start of next year. Now, before we get too crazy and get too far down this rabbit hole, what does Temple of Oculus Anubis mean? And I don't know who was the first person to dub the term Oculus Anubis. However, the term Oculus means a round or eye-like opening or design. So just an eye, like seeing through an eye, which already that makes you think of like Illuminati, the all-seeing eye. And then Anibus was actually an Egyptian god who led people to the underworld, or hell, which the underworld is going to come back very heavily in this video a little later on as well. And I guess from sources I read, he was also the Egyptian god of mummification and embalming. So it's like this guy was the one who just prepared the dead for, the immediate aftermath of their death, all the way to them being led to their final dwelling in the underworld. So you can almost say Oculus Anubis is like an eye's view into the underworld. And some people have even said, kind of the more extreme conspiracy theorists have said that this Temple of Oculus Anubis, it is a gateway to hell. Now, why would they say that? I found a very interesting post It was on pentracks.com was what it was called. And I guess it's predominantly a blog that this guy writes, and apparently this guy's studied and written a lot about the Illuminati, which makes him kind of an authority on it, but also means, you know, when you're an authority on things like that, some people, I don't know if this guy is, some people can get a little crazy and want to say everything's the Illuminati these days. I've seen a lot of stupid YouTube videos trying to claim that, you know, athletes who wear number 33 on their jersey are Illuminati because that's an Illuminati number, and things like that. But this guy's entry, it didn't seem exaggerated. It didn't seem like he was prone to like extreme flights of fancy or anything like that, but it was very interesting. He paid a visit to at least the gate and gave it a look around. And one thing he noticed was the two lions that sit out there. You know, on each side of the gate, there's a lion sculpture. I think both of them have been damaged, unfortunately, either by vandals or by people sneaking onto the property, or people who heard tale of this Oculus Anubis place and were pissed about it. I don't know why you vandalized the property, but that's happened. But anyway, this guy on this pentracks.com who has, you know, done deep study into the Illuminati, he said that he spoke to, and again, I don't know Illuminati terminology that well, so maybe you'll understand this better than me, but he said he spoke to an Illuminati Mother of Darkness, I think is what it's called. Yes, Illuminati Mother of Darkness was that what he described. I don't know what that means, but it seems like someone who's connected with the Illuminati. Anyway, in his posting, he said that this individual told him that you know a house is an Illuminati house when they have two lions out front guarding it. That's like a sign. So, interesting. I highly doubt every house that has, you know, lion figurines in front of it. I see that periodically random houses will have those big lion or tiger type statues out in front of their house. I don't think they're all Illuminati, but it's an interesting connection. And I'm probably butchering the term, but there is also something known as an occur. I'm thinking that's how it's pronounced. I'm not certain. But it's spelled A-K-U-R, and it connects back to, you know, Egypt, culture, and history. I think there was even an, how do you pronounce it? I have to look away to literally see. An Akaru cult, A-K-E-R-U cult, and essentially what an Akur is it is a guardian of the underworld, and they're often the concept behind that is that they would have actual lions there guarding the gates to the underworld. And here you have this temple of Oculus Anubis, and they have two tiger statues at the gate into their property. So you kind of see where people start getting really interested in even just this entrance to this place. And kind of in that same realm of looking back in Egyptian history, Egyptian lore, more specifically, this large statue that when you look through the gates and look a little ways down the pathway in there, you see this big statue down there. That is, people who have looked at the pictures have said that that is a statue representation of, and I'm probably going to butcher this too, Sekhmet, if I'm saying that right. I'm probably not, but it is spelled, I have to look at my notes, S-E-K-H-M-E-T. Maybe the H is silent, it's Sekhmet. I don't know. But Sekhmet was an Egyptian goddess of war. But she was also like the controller of the underworld, of hell, essentially, in Egyptian lore. So now, if you're combining all of these things together, you have, at the entryway to the Temple of Oculus Anubis, you have a tall gate with a crest over it that people have even said has Illuminati implications to it. You have two of these figurines out front, lion figurines, and then through the gates, right down the path, there's a statue of this goddess of war who controlled the underworld, hell. And that's where people get this idea that the Temple of Oculus Anubis, whether it's a cult or anything else in the world, is perhaps satanic. It's this gateway to hell. When you think about that's how it looks when you go in, and you think in, again, this is Egyptian lore, and you have all these representations, these Egyptian figurines all over. And then you think in the concept of Egyptian lore, they have these lions standing guard at the gate to hell. And the leader is this Egyptian goddess, who this statue right past the gates is in representation of, and she's the, the head person of hell. So either that's really suspicious, or maybe Dr. Neal has a sick sense of humor. He was a sick son of a bitch, so I wouldn't put it past him. And while on the subject of, crazy things like the Illuminati and, secret groups and, all that underground stuff that we hear so much about, but we never really get to see as a society, it is very interesting that this home is located at a address that is listed as Damascus, Oregon. Now, Damascus is actually like a biblical town. It shows up in the Bible. I believe it's between Babylon and Jerusalem. And I know in one of the postings I read from somebody who actually, has done a lot of research into the Illuminati, has said that, one way to test someone's drive or interest in the occult is they'll ask them which one, Damascus or Jerusalem. And if they say Damascus, it means they have, I don't know how this conclusion is reached, but it means that they have a more stronger leaning towards the occult. And so they will have that side of them brought out by, educating them more about the occult and manifesting that interest. So there's kind of this very strong Damascus Illuminati connection. And just possibly by coincidence, this Temple of Oculus Anubis is located in a town called Damascus. Granted, it's not the biblical Damascus, but it's the same name. And Damascus also has a very strong connection with Freemasons, as I read. And I think actually that piece that I read where they were talking about, questioning Jerusalem or Damascus, it may have been more of a Freemason test to see if they wanted to bring you into this, super secret Freemason society. And, people wonder, how was the town of Damascus, Oregon established? Was it established by Freemasons and that's how it got its name? We're going to have our own little Damascus in Oregon. And another thing I found that I do love for its total utter craziness, and I don't really know how accurate it is, but there's this, I found a posting. It was actually a Twitter posting with this picture, and it was this idea that there's this Pentagram of Blood, that if you lay down the pentagram lines onto the United States and even Canada, those lines, that the pentagram has, those, 5 lines, they pass through all these locations where all these horrible tragedies happened. And this poster, I don't know how accurate this is. I'm very suspicious of the whole thing in general, but they claim that this line that connects Port-au-Prince, heading out to the Caribbean, to Seattle, on that line, the Temple of Oculus Anubis lands on that line. And it's argued that these lines on this pentagram cover where the Vegas shooting happened, one of the more recent tragedies that's happened in our world, where Waco happened, the Oklahoma City bombing, the Kennedy assassination, Hurricane Katrina, 9/11. I mean, do I need to go on? The Boston Marathon bombings. All of this stuff apparently falls into these lines. Again, I'm really skeptical, but with all those big events connected, I found it very interesting that someone took the time to try to say that Oculus Anubis also falls in line with that stuff. And it's a real mixed bag between the people that want to believe in this and then the people that are skeptical of it, because you're seeing a lot of conclusions reached on both sides of the equation by people who have never set foot on that property. I've read multiple articles by people that are like, this is stupid, it's just a private family, it's just a you know, and written by people who have never even been to Oregon before. On the other side, people posting on Reddit and 4chan who have never even been to the Pacific Northwest, talking about what all these individual little things mean. And at the end of the day, all you can do is theorize if you haven't actually seen what's inside there. And again, you know, I'm the last person in the world to advocate trespassing, and you know, it's very interesting to see what people see when they go in there, because people have gone onto the property, I guarantee, without permission. And the things that have been documented by people who have snuck in, people who have just visited on the outside, are suspicious no matter what way you shake them. There's a video that a couple of guys took driving down. They drove down to the gate. One of the guys taking the video, starts spazzing. He's telling him to get out. So the driver, being a dumbass, like blares his horn, like, oh, I don't give a shit, you know, that kind of thing. And they turn around, and there's actually cars parked along the road and people standing out in the street almost blocking them. They had to like squeeze around them. So when you hear these stories of people saying that, you know, people come out to the streets and like watch you when you go down there, you know, maybe they had these people stationed there and it's all fake. I don't know. It doesn't look fake to me. And there's another video I watched that was called Behind the Scenes of a Cult, where these guys snuck in there. Multiple people have snuck in and gotten down to the unfinished home that, of course, all this fraud money was going into. And then when they got busted, you know, I don't know how far along they were in completing the home, but obviously it's still just sitting out there undone, because, I mean, who's going to finish it now? And so, yeah, multiple people have gone down to the home. People have gone inside of it and walked through the parts that have been completed, which has got to be an eerie feeling. And I know people have tried going under the foundation of the home to try to see if there's maybe any way to find into these tunnels. And from the videos I've seen on YouTube, nobody's been successful in doing that, and maybe these tunnels had more work done on them after these visits. Who's to say? But something that's very interesting, and I first saw it in this video called Behind the Scenes of a Cult that's on YouTube. There is this, like, it's described as an altar space, and it's very, very interesting. You can say whatever you want about these Egyptian statues and whatnot that easily could have been bought, delivered, and placed on the property somewhere, but this has clearly been on the property for a very long time, and it's a foundation that has like sort of a rock type altar looking space there, like where you would stand and address people, and there's columns standing up all around it, almost like they should be holding a roof over it, but there's no roof there. Like there's reason some people have to believe that this is like was also something that's unfinished, but it also has clearly been on the property for a long time, and something that everybody who's explored this particular site on the property has noticed, that there's a space that is filled with water, but you can actually see steps going down into it. Like you can go down in there to some secluded place that's under it, but it's filled with water, you know, preventing people from actually getting down there. That's really suspicious. And close by to that, not too far away, I noticed, again, pretty much everybody who's explored the area has found this and taken interest in it. There's kind of an interesting formation of rocks where there's one big rock, one big thin rock that's upright like this, and people think, you know, they've looked at it and they think that's like a door, that's an entryway into something. But the idea, I think, was that you pull that rock back and there would be an entry into something. What though? And what, you know, because you could argue, oh, maybe the rock just looks interesting like that. How do you prove that that's a doorway into some chamber or whatever might be down there? And yet, and he pointed this out in his post, if you look, if you're looking at the picture and you look to the left-hand side, you'll notice there's a torch sticking up out of a rock. It just like takes me back to, like, you know, centuries past, when like you'd go into a cave, or, you know, you'd like open a door that would lead you down into a dungeon, and you have to grab the torch and light it to like march down in there. was the vibe I was getting from it. So if that right there isn't a doorway into something underground, why is there a torch there? Like telling you, hey, light me up when you go down into the darkness. Very strange. And something else that's kind of, if nothing else, unexplained. I've never really heard people address it. I'm pretty sure I've seen it on Google Maps because there's something that looks kind of like a little rounded dome building. Again, I know I saw it in this behind the scenes of a cult video, and as these guys are walking through, they flash on it quickly, and it looks like this big dome building with a big open space. Like, it's not a doorway, it's like almost like a garage entry where you could like back a big truck into. They didn't approach it and explore it. It may have been too close to the original house that was built there, that was already there on the property, the original home there that they were building this, supposedly this big, much larger house, and then the tunnels were going to connect the two. It's still just so strange to me that these people would invest over $2 million into building a tunnel to lead from one house to another. Maybe they just didn't care because they had a scam going and they were like, the money's just going to keep flowing in. Who cares? It's still very suspicious to me that they would waste that much money on something like that when they could build, you know, I mean, what do they need a tunnel for? Why do they need to go underground to get from one house to another? That's strange, no matter what way you look at it. And there's proof. You know, people have said that there's no evidence of these permits. It's just part of this wild fairy tale. But I actually looked it up and found a list of permits between 2008 and 2018. 12 permits were taken out by that family. What's really interesting is none of them were taken out by the doctor. They were taken out by a Natalia Neal, who I'm assuming is probably his daughter. Going all the way back to 2008, they're all taken out under her name, even though the presumption is the great doctor was the owner of this property. And I noticed that she's the one that's in charge of dealing with the property now, with all these issues arising with it. And yeah, under the permits, there's a permit to build these heated tunnels from one house to another. It's there, black and white. $2.6 million project, according to the permit. And I'm like, why? It's so strange. And getting back to this big, you know, dome kind of structure with the big entryway, is that connected to the tunnels? I never see anybody talk about that aspect of it. They talk about, you know, the gates, the lions out front, the big statue, the altar, the unfinished mansion, the, you know, stairs going down in the water, the rock door that might be leading to someplace underground. But other than a few glances, nobody talks about that structure. So that is completely shrouded in mystery, even till today. So that's really the strangest aspect to this whole thing. If you want to dismiss all this intrigue and interest as just folly, people just getting too excited about something, when really it's just an introverted family, as it seems, with some things on their property, how do you explain away the staircase going down under this altar, this rock door that presumably goes underground into something? There's all these seeming things that go underground. I'm sorry, that is a lot more suspicious than, oh, this statue's here. Why does he own that statue? Well, he's interested in history, so he got the statue and put it there. Okay, we can accept that. But what about all this underground stuff? You know, they're doing these, they've taken a permit out, they're going to spend millions on heated tunnels between their homes. You've got this staircase going down under what is an altar space, which has all kinds of strange implications to it. This rock door that perhaps leads underground. This big dome structure that nobody seems to, even the people that explore the property don't seem to want to waste their time with. That just has a big open entryway that goes into darkness, but it's kind of on the side of a hill, so does that go underground? You know, it makes me wonder, more than what we can actually see walking around the property, what's under that property? And it seems no one can figure out what. But obviously there's something going on under that land. Whether it's nefarious or someone who used to live there was maybe a survivalist and put that there, I don't know. I don't know. Nobody knows. But when I see stuff like that, it makes it harder for me to think that the suspicious behavior of the people on this property ends with the healthcare and tax fraud. I have a hard time thinking that's all there is to it. It's just this asshole doctor tormenting his family and scamming the government at the same time. But this is not the end. No. Not by a long shot. I heard about this through the grapevine, and when I heard it, it was so stinking weird. I didn't know how to process it, so I kind of didn't, but I let it go. But I was reminded of it when I wanted to do this video. And this, I'm just going to take you to some online screen capture I shot to delve us into this further strange connection to this Oculus Anubis story. Alright, now get ready to really have your mind blown. This is so strange. And this is going on while all of this insurance fraud, IRS fraud stuff was going on. So, you see there's this guy, Michael Allen Harrison. Michael Allen Harrison is a massively prominent musician. And he's from the Portland area, but he's not just big up here. This guy is nationally, internationally well known. And when I type in his name with, and I'm not sure if this is actually his YouTube specifically, but obviously it's a place where his things related to him or his music are. If I type in his name to go with Tony Neal, which that's Anthony Neal, the son of the doctor, the guy who was, in cahoots with him for this thing. And you go through all these videos, and all of a sudden you stumble onto this. It's a video titled Behind the Gates Outdoor Temple Stage Digital Plans. It's a Michael Allen Harrison song, music by Michael Allen Harrison. Design vision, Tony Neal. So this is Anthony Neal, the son of the doctor. And if you watch this video and scan through it, there's music playing in the background, and you notice it's this graphic design of, it says outdoor temple stage, but if you look at it, you got all the columns, you've got this platform, this altar stage. This looks so much, obviously minus the roof that's not there. This looks so much like a completed version of this creepy altar that people see with stairs going down beneath it. And if you look at it, see, even right here, you can see there's a pool there. So you've got that water connection. And on the back side here, this would be that lower point where people saw the stairs that went down in the water. So what the heck is this? And there's a reference to temple behind the gates that go into the temple of Oculus Anubis. And the design visual is the son of the doctor who lives on this property. And the connection doesn't end there. If you back out all this stuff, again, you got Michael Allen Harrison and Tony Neal. Here we go. Steal Your Heart Away. This is a song done by Aubrey Cleland, who actually, it says that she was on American Idol and came in 11th place during the 12th season. But the song is copywritten by Michael Allen Harrison and Tony Neal. And wouldn't you know, look at the image that is there with the song. That is the entryway to Oculus Anubis. I don't know what to make of this. This strange connection. Why is Michael Allen Harrison suddenly getting mixed up with the Neal family and this Oculus element? And I actually found the lyrics. Here we go. Steal Your Heart Away. Michael Allen Harrison, this song. You click on this, you've got the lyrics. Okay, Steal Your Heart Away. Lyrics by Tony Neal. The son wrote this song. Oh, why you leave me here when my blood is so cold? Oh, can you know how my heart you stole? Staring down those hounds from hell. I mean, God, talk about making people want to think there's crazy stuff happening on this property. Maybe you're right to say, You're the storm that came that day. I shall, so-and-so, I need you, I'll steal you away. This life I wanted is in a dream, not in some fantasy. You gave me love, you gave me a kind that was finally mine, not something I had to steal. Oh, I need you, I'll steal you away. I want to know, will you come back? Will you hold me like that night? So, I mean, if you go through the rest of these lyrics, it's, kind of just a general love song, but staring down those hounds from hell. How about staring down those lions from hell, like the lions you have guarding your hellion gate going onto your family's property? I don't know what to make of this. This is the strangest damn thing. This Michael Allen Harrison Tony Neal connection. I don't know how to deal with it. Why? Why is a guy as prominent as Michael Allen Harrison? This is a guy that is in constant... everybody wants this guy. This guy is internationally known. This guy has so many better, more prestigious things to be doing than getting mixed up with this family that lives at this, or I guess lived, at this Oculus property. And here he is getting all mixed up with the son. And it's this brief video of this woman walking up to the gates there at that Oculus property. And she's speaking in a foreign language. I'm not sure what she's saying. But it's like she's walking to the gates, and it's like... And there's a correlation there between Michael Allen Harrison and Anthony Neal on that as well. And this is all while all these court proceedings are going on, and Anthony Neal is kind of taking the complete fall for something that his father did. And it's like now suddenly, there's already all this controversy going on about this property and all these crazy things that people want to say are going on there. And now the son is like directly embracing it. Like he's getting involved with this tree, he's making this digital outline of this altar space. And he's involved in this video that's showing a woman walking to the gates and is totally embracing this, what lies beyond, what kind of hell or cult lies beyond the gates of this home. And I'm wondering to myself, this Anthony Neal guy, he just got screwed. This guy got screwed by his psycho father his whole life. And now he's finally paying for it. And I'm like, because I can't think of a reason why he would just randomly be embracing this. Unless, is he taking advantage of the lore, or is he maybe exposing in a creative way? Is he trying to expose something that maybe his father was into on that property? We already know this guy was screwed up as all hell, this doctor. So why would it be such a stretch to think that he was into all kinds of other crazy stuff? He was into bondage, which is frightening enough. He tormented his autistic son. Like, this guy was a real... In addition to being a piece of crap, this guy was a genuine weirdo. So, are these videos his son, now that his dad's gone and doesn't have control over him anymore, are these videos his son is putting out to kind of... It's like he's, in a very subtle manner, revealing that which may or may not have been going on there. And maybe it's not as crazy as we want to believe, but maybe there was some strange little something going on there, you know? Maybe there wasn't a full-blown cult, but maybe there was some little rituals that were going on in there at certain times. You know, maybe these stories are true about these people saying they were chased out by people in these very nondescript vehicles. What are all these random things people are finding? Why are there so many ways to go underground on the property? You know, when I started this video, I really kind of was in, you know, I'd finished my research and I thought, you know, it's probably just a weird guy who wanted all this stuff. He was a piece of crap, but I guess he was interested in Egyptian history. It's kind of strange, but... And now, you know, I wanted to believe something was crazy, you know, these last couple of years going on there. And now that I've gone through all the research, I'm kind of switching around and it's kind of like, well, you know, it's probably just a lot of people making something out of nothing. But now, coming to the end, I'm seriously wondering again, what is all this stuff? It doesn't feel like this is all just innocent. Maybe the statue's innocent. Maybe the pyramids out front, or maybe there's something innocent about those. But this other stuff that's going on, that is, you know, things that have happened recently since the death of the doctor and this court proceeding happened over this fraud. If you had to, you know, put a gun to my head, and you had to say, right now, this moment, me standing in this room, what do you really think is going on here? Is it nothing, or is it the Illuminati cult conspiracy to end all conspiracies? If you had to ask me right now, what do I think is going on there? I would say, honestly, there was probably some low level, which doesn't excuse it. There was probably some low level, you know, not necessarily a cult, but maybe some kind of thing you would compare to like the Skull and Bones Society, some kind of secret gathering. What was being done, what rituals may have happened, obviously I can't say, but I think at the very least there was some low level, you know, maybe not something that's going to necessarily endanger other people, but something happening enough to where these certain things that are being seen on the property can have deeper meaning, but not something so serious that extreme security measures need to be taken. But that being said, you know, there's permits going back several years to like 2010 that show that all kinds of security stuff was being bought for the property, and there were security cameras all around. Obviously, security measures were being taken before this Oculus Anubis thing even blew up. So actually, I can't say. I was going to say, like, you know, they haven't taken super security because obviously people have been able to sneak onto the property, but still, security measures have been taken. I can't walk away from this thing anymore and just say it's just a strange, at least a strange father figure, potentially a strange family with just some odd things on their property. I just can't now. Now that things for this video are pretty much said and done. I can't just walk away and say, you know, I think it's just some strange people with some strange stuff on their property. I think it's something more. What is it? For certain, you know, probably a small group that gathered to celebrate something nefarious. I don't know if it goes so far as to be something Illuminati connected. Again, I don't know if it's a full-out cult thing. I don't see how that would be possible, because in order to have a cult, you need to pretty much keep all the people in that area, and you'd be seeing people coming in and out all the time. You know, probably dressed the same and driving similar vehicles. And you would see something that would show that. But I think it was something at a slightly lower level. I can't say for certain what it is, but I do think there's something strange had or has been going on at this site, most likely going on somewhere under the property. Some hidden layer down there, through that rock door, down those steps of that altar, beneath that water. You know, much more likely something was going on there than anything strange about these hidden tunnels. That's honestly what I think at this point. I genuinely think there was, and maybe up till recently there still has been things going on there. And that makes it even more interesting to see what happens with this property. You know, I think we're less than a month away as of this recording of this property going up for auction. What is going to happen? You know, is something strange going to happen when that comes about that tells us even more so that there's something weird going on at this site, Temple of Oculus Anubis? We'll just have to wait and see, but I wanted to get this video out before then. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed that lengthy, detailed dive into the story of something crazy that's going on not too far away from where I live. So maybe I'm putting myself in some danger, guys. I don't know. But anyway, if that starts to happen, I'll be sure to let you guys know. And all that said, till next time, my fellow historians, fellow adventurers, remember to like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Help a fellow amateur historian out. Hit up my Patreon if you want. Link in the description below. And I'll see you guys next time.